Welcome to About the Winelands. In this show, we will be chatting to influencers and leaders in the wine industry, winemakers, restaurants, and other businesses. Tune in every Wednesday and Friday for our latest episodes. You will find us on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so that you do not miss out. Now, to get on with the show. Today, we are chatting to Tim Pearson. Tim and his wife Vaughan are the owners of Seven Springs Winery in the lovely Overberg region of South Africa. Tim, thank you for joining us this morning. It's great to have you online. Welcome to our chat.
Thank you.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became involved in the wine industry in South Africa.
Okay, that's quite a long story, but I'll be as brief as possible. I'm 66 years old. I'm English. I've born and bred in the United Kingdom, but the South African connection. I'll go back a few years. 1994, 1995. My wife and I lived in South Africa with our two young daughters for 6 months. We lived in a place called Nelspruit, which is now, I think, Mbombela, which is in what used to be called the Eastern Transvaal. We were going to buy a small cleaning business over there, but it didn't work out. But we were there for 6 months. So I guess that's where our real passion for South Africa came from. We loved the Kruger Park and we loved the area and things like that. So the business didn't work out, so we came back to the UK. I built my business up over here, which is a commercial cleaning business. And 2005, my wife and I came back to South Africa for a 3-week holiday. We were in the Cape for 3 weeks. And it was my wife who said, look, if you're still interested in doing something in the wine business, wine industry, let's just have a look and see if there's anything over here. And we visited Hermanus for 2 days. And my wife said, look, if we're going to do anything, this would be a great spot. So came back to the UK, did a few web searches and found a piece of land that was for sale down the Hemel and Aarde Road and spoke to the owner, went back and purchased 12 hectares of land. And that's how Seven Springs started. Initially, we were going to go in with a few other people who were going to buy similar plots of land and then go in as a, not as a cooperative, but as a joint venture, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
They fell by the wayside, so we decided to start our own business up and start up at Seven Springs. And I'll come on to how we got the name later. But that's in a nutshell how it started. I have no experience in the wine industry.
So I was wondering about that because it's quite a jump from a cleaning business to the wine industry.
Okay, I've always loved wines, and a lot of our holidays when the girls were younger. We have two daughters. Kim, who's 36, and Kate, our youngest, who's 33. A lot of our holidays when they were much younger were camping holidays in France, and they always were in areas which were wine-producing areas because I've always loved wine. So that's where this sort of the beginning of like the knowledge came from, and visiting winemakers and visiting different estates and things like that. And a lot of them were very, very small people, very small farmers. So that's and we didn't have much money in those days, so the holidays had to be done on the cheap, which meant we were taking last-minute cancellation holidays and just going to areas that were beautiful and were full of full of wine farms.
Awesome. Yeah, the French countryside and the French wine areas are such a joy to visit. Tim, why did you decide to establish a new winery from scratch rather than investing into one that already existed?
Okay, I guess the easy answer for that one, Will, is that I guess I've always loved a challenge. And I think the thing is, it would have, yes, I guess it would have been easy. We have a house in Italy. Okay, so we have a home in the area where they make the Verdicchio grape or Verdicchio wine in Italy. People say, well, why didn't you set up there? And it wasn't a matter of just sort of investing in a wine farm or something like that. I like to take something from nothing. I enjoy a challenge. But we'd found this piece of land and we felt that we could develop it. We knew the area was good for making Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. We didn't have a lot of money behind us. We didn't have, millions and millions of rand that we could invest in a wine farm. So it's something we had to do from a more, if you like, a more modest start. And by buying some land and then planting that land and then developing it from scratch, gave us the opportunity to do this. And my cleaning business was, we employed 250 people in the cleaning business over here. And that business was making enough money to be able to invest on an ongoing basis in Seven Springs.
That's awesome. It must have been quite a journey from the time you planted the first vines to actually producing the first bottle.
I think that's a bit of an understatement, Will. I mean, look, okay, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but life is a journey. And I think what you have to do, if you're passionate about something, you can find a way of doing it. I'm not, you have to live within your means, I guess, but it's been an interesting journey. I've had to apply logic to all I do, but we have some good friends over there in the wine industry, so we knew people like Bayers Truter and Ken Forrester and Darnie DeVette. We'd met people like this before, we even thought about buying some land over there. And I always felt that the South African wine industry, or people within that industry, were very much united, very much pro South Africa, very much pro the winelands, very much pro their own products, and were people I saw had a real passion for what they're doing. But that's the same with anybody making wine or anybody in farming. I think people don't go into this type of business to make a lot of money. If that had been something that was high on my agenda, then we wouldn't have gone into the wine business. We'd have invested money in property or something like that. But I think the most important thing for us was, and I'm very much involved in Seven Springs with my wife as well. Vaughan, my wife, works with me, and we work very much as a team over here. But so that's the scenario there.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, it's true that what you're saying is that farming, I think, lends itself, to be a community type operation in the first place, and it's very nice that you can actually, do your business and you guys doing it as a couple is amazing. Seven Springs, an interesting name. Where did that come from?
Very good. Okay. Well, if I tell you, we purchased the land in 2006, and then we planted vines 2007, 2008. So we actually have sort of 8.5 hectares of planted grapes. But so the fact was, we had time to think about names and do marketing and start getting things into shape. The name Seven Springs took us about 4 years to come up with.
Wow.
It was only in we didn't want to use something like Pearson Family Vineyards, and we just couldn't come up with a name that we really felt was appropriate. Anyway, we decided that our first harvest would be 2010. It was going to be 2011. But in November 2009, Peter Finlayson, who is Bouchard Finlayson, co-owner and winemaker, Peter said, look, if you want to make wine next year, i.e. in 2010, you can do so, because these grapes are good enough to make wine. So we were then sort of a year ahead of where our plans were, and then we thought, oh, we've got to come up with a name. We've got to come up with somebody to make our wines and somewhere to make the wines if we're going to make them in 2010. So we then started looking for an appropriate name, and it was actually my wife Vaughan who was looking online at Caledon, which is our nearest town. Seven Springs is between Caledon and Hermanus. Vaughan was reading that Caledon has 7 springs, 6 of them thermal springs, 1 cold spring, and we said, that's it, that's the name. We had that eureka moment. So that's where Seven Springs came from.
Oh, that's an awesome story. What's a bit of inspiration there? So
and I thought if winemaking is going to be half as difficult as coming up with the name, we might as well get out of it now.
Well, I mean, now you're talking about that. I would like to ask a bit about your, your winemaking philosophy, and also tell us a bit more about the wines that you are producing.
Okay, so the grapes we planted were Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay for the white grapes, and Pinot Noir and Syrah for the red grapes. So we make 6 wines in total, an oaked and an unoaked Chardonnay. We make a Sauvignon Blanc. We make a Syrah Rosé, which is only in its 2nd vintage. We've only made two rosés.
Interesting.
We make a Syrah or a Syrah or a Shiraz, if you want to call it Shiraz, and a Pinot Noir. And I guess our winemaking philosophy is minimal intervention. We only use sprays and chemicals as and when they're required. So we keep it, minimal intervention is a very difficult term to sort of quantify, but we keep it as naturally as possible. We're not organic, we are not biodynamic, because we have next door an apple farmer who uses chemical sprays and things, and we're close to people that are using chemical sprays. So we didn't know enough about organic farming, living 6,000 miles away. So minimal intervention is what we do in the actual vineyard and the winery.
That's interesting. The oaked Chardonnay that you are making interests me, because it was a fashion in the 90s in South Africa to almost over oak the Chardonnay. And
correct.
So can you tell me a little bit more about that? That's quite interesting.
Yeah, from day one, we've only ever used 2nd and 3rd fill barrels for our oaking regime, if you like. So we use barrels that have already been used a couple of times, 3 times before.
I assume that is because your vineyard is quite new.
Yeah, and the other thing is, neither my wife and I like overly oaked wines. Why kill off good fruit with a heavily oak? I think if you're going to add oak or add oak barrels, what you need to do is to use the barrels or use the oak as a complement and not as a dominating factor. And I think with winemaking and wine, I think the most important thing is having the right balance. So when we started the farm, when Peter Finlayson said, look, you can make a wine in 2010, we had to find a winemaker. So a very good friend of ours, a guy called Guillaume Nell, said he'd had a young lady working for him for the season. He was a winemaker at Backsburg at the time. Okay. Guillaume came up with a young lady called Rihanna van der Merwe, and Rihanna was 24 at the time. So we took Rihanna on in very late 2009 to make our wines in 2010. We didn't have a winery at the time, so we made our first wines at Iona in Elgin. And okay. In subsequent years, we made our wines at a place called Almenkirk in Elgin, until moving to our own winery facility 2.5 years ago.
Oh, awesome. I see you've established quite a good network of international distribution, and that must have taken a lot of hard work and sweat. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that was actually established in quite a short time for such an extensive network.
Yeah, I think the thing is, it's about reaching out to people, but it's also difficult is the right word, because you can't meet these people face to face often. If you go to shows like Provine, and we've been to Provine twice, and it's such a big show and has so many people going on. I think what I tried to do to start with was target people who I felt would be suitable for importing our wines. I didn't have a hit list of, look, let's have a look at this country first and that country second. I think what we wanted to do, the most important thing, was working with people that have a similar philosophy to us, people that you felt could represent your brand in their country, but also people we felt we could work with on a personal basis and help build our business while building their business. And we've had some people that we've dealt with. We've had, we had an importer in the USA. Unfortunately, his business stopped. Him and his wife were divorced, and we were ended up owing us a lot of money and things like that. So you have all of these sort of you can do as much homework as you can on people, but we have some good importers. We have some people we've been our longest importer is a guy called Morton, and he's based in Denmark. He has a very small wine shop called Vingaven, which is in the north of Denmark. But he's consistently orders our wines. We go over every couple of years and do wine tastings with his customers. And it's a matter of building relationships up and actually working with people. So yes, we have a number of networks. We're actually looking at the moment at extending or expanding our international markets. But we only produce 50,000 bottles a year, Will. So we're not we don't produce a massive amount of wines. And certainly from our perspective, we opened a tasting room about 18 months ago, which is obviously closed during this current crisis. But that's obviously that's bringing more and more people in, both visitors locally and international visitors, because we are close to Hermanus, international visitors to our vineyard and our winery.
Just a quick interruption, but I do need to remind you that our winelands have some of the most fantastic places you can visit. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Visit Winelands, and we will keep you updated with the latest offers and other special deals in the winelands. That is on Instagram at Visit Winelands. Now, let's get on with the show. Talking about the US, I see that you've got a brand called Over the Mountain, specifically that you branded for the US market. Is there a story behind this?
Well, would you think there's a story behind it?
Oh, yes, that's why I'm asking the question, I'm a curious person.
Of course, there's a story behind it. The fact is, there is, if you do a web search, you'll probably find that there is a Seven Springs based in Missouri, a very small winery based in Missouri called Seven Springs. There's also a small vineyard, it's about 22 acres in acre terms, in Oregon called Seven Springs Vineyard. Okay. The vineyard it's just used to produce Pinot Noir grapes, but they then sell the grapes to one or two producers who produce the wine under their own label, but under Seven Springs Vineyard. So
okay.
We felt if we're going to sell our wines in America, the only way of doing it was to come up with some kind of alternative brand, rather than looking at legal battles of saying that we're called Seven Springs, etc., etc. So we decided to come up with a different name for America, and that name took me about 10 minutes, which is quite a change from the Seven Springs name.
I was just thinking that it's quite a difference in choosing a name in time frame.
and very easily, well, the name Seven Springs came from the name Over the Mountains. Sorry, came from almost a literal translation of Overberg, which is the area
Oh,
that
okay,
we're
yes,
in.
of course.
So Overberg, you being Afrikaans, I guess, would know what the literal translation of that is. Or
Mhm.
so it was very, very simple to come up with that name. We hadn't even thought about it before, and then when we thought, oh, we've got to come up with an alternative name, it just sort of snapped, and we thought Overberg, over the mountain. Yeah, let's go for that.
So that's interesting to me that you mentioned that, I mean, you're obviously not producing in bulk. And I've talked to a lot of wineries before that, are scared of the US market because they feel they cannot really supply the demand that would come from the US. Have you had any areas in that problem or problems in that area?
No, I think what you have to do is to choose. Look, the important thing I think is choosing an importer, and it's no good us going for an importer that is states wide or covers all of the United States, because obviously we don't have enough wine. We couldn't supply a fraction of what they would look for. So you have to choose importers that probably have, we have an importer at the moment, for instance, in Florida. They're called PG Fine Wines. They're based near Fort Lauderdale, but they only cover Florida, and they only cover the restaurants, mostly restaurant business. And so, they are of a size which we can supply and look after, and it works well. So it's about not trying to chew off more than you can eat.
So my next question is about, your location. I mean, you're so well located between tourism hotspots. They're close to Cape Town, close for lots of international visitors in a place like Hermanus. And are you currently looking to expand your tasting room and maybe build a restaurant or accommodation or any of those things that most of, the bigger farms are doing? Is that in your future plans?
Look, I don't know. I mean, no is the simple answer to the question. We have a tasting room. It's quite small. It's very personal. It very much fits in with our philosophy as people, and I guess our brand. What we are, we're very inclusive people. We're very welcoming people. And anybody coming to the tasting room, it's a matter of giving them a personal tasting rather than a generic tasting. You don't want to employ people in a tasting room that goes through a sort of a checklist and said, well, this wine is X amount of percent alcohol. It was harvested on this date. So when people come and taste wines with us, it's either Whitney, the lady that runs our office, or Gus. We have a winemaker now called Gus Dale. Gus has been with us 2 years because Rihanna, our winemaker we've grown up with, Rihanna went and is now living in Australia. She met a guy from Australia and decided that he couldn't work in South Africa, so she decided to go and live with him in Australia. But so it's either Gus, Whitney, or Renico, who's our assistant winemaker, who will do the tasting with people when they come on the farm. So we kind of afford to take somebody on full time doing that job because we don't get sufficient visitors. We get quite a few visitors, so it's done by whoever's there. And if my wife and I are there, we usually go and come over to South Africa on there.
Are you open certain times, or do visitors have to make an appointment?
No, we're open daily 11 o'clock until 4 o'clock. So
Okay.
our office is at the winery. We're open 11 till 4. If people want to come and do a group tasting, for instance, and we have some groups coming in from we had a group in from New Zealand last year, and I think another one from the Netherlands last year. If somebody's going to bring a tour along of 7, 8, 9, 10 people, just let us know, and then we can prepare for it. But weekends. We open weekends from September until the end of March. We open 11 o'clock until 4 o'clock weekends.
Oh, awesome. Tim, now to something more serious. I mean, this coronavirus, I think, has forced everyone to rethink their business models. And I noticed that you don't have an online shop on your website, as an example. But do you have any changes or new ideas in mind going forward? Are you seeing any major changes happening?
You said go into something more serious. I thought the wine business was quite serious, but yes. I think what the coronavirus is doing, it's obviously everybody's going into a lockdown mode. And as I said, we live in the UK. We only arrived back in England from South Africa about 11, 12 days ago.
Wow.
But what's happening is more and more people are obviously shopping online now because they're unable to get to the shops. And online was not something we didn't have an online shop. We did actually, our wines were or have been available online through a company called A Buzzer based in Cape Town. Mm-hmm. A guy called Nick Plummer has been running and managing A Buzz. He owns a Buzz, but not directly. But we were in the process before this happened of setting up an online portal on our website for our wines, and we have someone who is doing that for us. She's based in Johannesburg. She is in the process, or has been in the process, of setting up an online business for us. I understand online. I mean, we have a company over here called Slurp. It's SLURP, and Slurp are an online wine merchant in the UK, and they've seen an exponential growth in their business, as most online businesses have in not just the UK, but I guess Europe. During the coronavirus situation, people are sitting at home; they can't get out so much. So they're ordering stuff that they would normally get from, say, a bottle store. They're now ordering online because there's a very little option of doing otherwise. But in South Africa, as you probably know, Will, we're not even able to sell wine anymore. We can't export any wines. So
yeah, it's actually, everything is shut down. Yes, I'm aware of that. I think also I saw that some of your European distributors, I think the one in Germany, has an online shop. So
Anvine is, yes, Anvine is 100% online, an online wine merchant.
Okay, that's awesome. So Tim, what is the most important thing that you've learned from your wine journey?
Oh, how long is this interview going to take? Well,
I mean, people are sitting at home, so go ahead. To pour your heart out here.
But no, it's not a matter of pouring my heart out. Look, I think the thing is, and I'm not just going to talk about what we've done here. I think if you have a passion for something, like I said earlier, you find a way of doing it. Would I have done something, or would we have done something different if we'd have started again? Yes, maybe, and I think we probably would have done. But I think what it's, I built my cleaning business over here from scratch, and we now employ 250 people. I didn't know a thing about cleaning before I started that business. I started from home because we didn't have any money. So I think I think what you can gain out of life in general is that if you've got a passion for doing something or a desire for doing something, find a way of doing it. I think what the wine industry, what we knew from the start was, we're not going to make a lot of money out of the wine business unless you build a business up and then sell it on. We were not looking to make a lot of money out of the business. It wasn't something we went into because we felt it was something we were going to get rich on, because we knew that was not the case. And I think what we did was we've met a lot of people. We've actually been to a lot of countries that we wouldn't have been to. We've had a a really positive experience. We've had negativities along the way. There always are in any business or any venture in life. But, you know, I don't have a philosophy, but, you know, the most important thing as far as we're concerned, and my wife and I are the same, that we're in good health and our kids are in good health. That is most important to us. And just treat people the way that you would like to be treated. We're no different to anybody else. We may have started a wine farm and we may own a wine farm, but that makes us no different to other people. As I said, in our philosophy at Seven Springs is that we're very welcoming, we're very open, we're very inclusive. And I think that the thing is, it's just this business has taken us to places that we wouldn't have been to, and it's given us experiences we wouldn't have had. And I think whatever you do in life, if you have a change of direction in your life, whether it's a job or whether it's a new partnership or whatever, it just throws you in a different direction. And I guess this is what's happened. If we hadn't have gone to Nelspruit, for instance, in 94, 95, to look at buying this cleaning business I told you about, I don't think we'd have been speaking to you now about having a wine business in the Western Cape.
Isn't it amazing? Because at the time you probably, were a bit dejected because the cleaning business didn't take off, and now you ended up in something that you really love.
No, I've never been dejected because I've always known, as I said, if my wife and I are together, and we've been married 40 years this year, that to me is very important. I think what you have to do is really go back to basics. If something doesn't work out, it may be a real negative to you at the time, but I think life shows you that what happens, you do something and it doesn't work out. Like I said, it throws you in a different direction. And what was a negative, and we loved Nelspruit, we loved the area of the Eastern Transvaal, but we came back to the UK and we built our business up here. So it just you just get on and do something else.
Awesome. Tim, as my last question to you, can you give us your very own wine quote?
That's a very good answer, and I think the very simple answer is no. I don't have any wine quotes, and if I did say something, it might sound pretty cheesy. So I think okay, I'll give you something. Drink wine and be happy.
Drink wine and be happy. Oh, that doesn't sound cheesy at all. That sounds right to me.
No, I think the thing is, look, I think the wine business it's a great business to be in. You've got some phenomenal winemakers in South Africa. You've got some phenomenal people in the industry. You've got an industry that gets very little support from the government. Gets very little support from WOSA. Unfortunately, WOSA is vastly underfunded. But you've got some brilliant people in the South African wine industry that are really driving the industry forward. They're earning the country a hell of a lot of money in exports and in revenue. And we feel really proud. My wife and I feel really proud of being involved in that industry, and we've made some really good friends, and we've had a lot of positive times.
Well, Tim, it was great chatting to you, and thank you so much for spending the time. I think our listeners will find this very interesting, and I would certainly love to meet you at some point and visit with you.
Well, you'd be very welcome to visit, whether we're there or not. We're there for 2.5 months usually. As I say, it's usually sort of most of January, February, and half of March. But if you ever get to out Hermanus Way or Caledon Way, you will be more than welcome, as any of your listeners will.
Thank you very much, Tim.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for supporting our show. If you would like to get more exposure for your business, please have a look at our sponsorship options. Also, for a small donation of 100 Rand, we will list links to your business on your website. Thanks again for supporting About Winelands. Please follow us on YouTube and on your social media channels. All details and links are in the description.